The transport ship from Earth looked like a metal box floating among diamonds. Jake stood at the viewing window and watched the elegant vessels of other species drift past. Their ships curved and glowed with lights that seemed alive. The human vessel was gray, practical, and utterly forgettable. "They are already laughing at us," said Lisa Park, stepping up beside him. She wore her military uniform with the calm confidence of someone who had faced worse odds before. "I counted 12 delegates pointing at our ship as we docked." Jake shrugged. He was a tall man with tired eyes and hands that showed years of work. "Let them point. We did not come here to win a beauty contest." The orbital station prime stretched before them like a city made of crystal and light. The Dominion had built it 3,000 years ago, and they never let anyone forget that fact. Every surface gleamed. Every corridor whispered of ancient power and superior technology. The station hosted the Centennial Technology Summit, where species from 12 star systems gathered to display their greatest innovations. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 50 years. In the eyes of most aliens, humans were still children learning to walk. The invitation to participate in the summit had come with barely hidden reluctance. They had made it clear that humanity's presence was a courtesy, not a recognition of worth. Jake did not care about their opinions. He cared about the device sitting in the cargo hold of their modest ship. The human delegation moved through the station's grand halls. Aliens of every shape and size filled the spaces around them. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated on fields of energy or crawled on dozens of limbs. Most barely glanced at the humans. Those who did looked away quickly, as if the sight was not worth remembering. A tall figure approached them. High Arbiter stood 8 feet tall, with skin like polished bronze and eyes that held the weight of centuries. He was the leader of the Dominion, and his presence commanded immediate silence from everyone nearby. "The humans have arrived," said. His voice was smooth and deep. "We are pleased that you accepted our invitation. It is important for younger species to observe and learn from those who have walked among the stars far longer." Jake kept his expression neutral. "We are grateful for the opportunity to participate." "Participate," repeated the word as if tasting something slightly unpleasant. "Yes, your participation is most welcome. I understand you have brought something to demonstrate, a power generation device, I believe." "The resonance engine," Jake confirmed. "It converts ambient cosmic radiation into stable energy." His thin lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "How charming. I look forward to seeing it. They have brought a shield generator that can withstand the heat of a supernova. They have developed a matter printer that can construct warships in hours. I am certain your little engine will be educational." He walked away without waiting for a response. His attendants followed like shadows. Lisa watched him go with hard eyes. "I want to punch him." "Get in line," muttered Dr. Amy Williams, the team's chief physicist. She was a small woman with sharp features and even sharper intelligence. But punching ancient alien leaders probably violates at least 3 diplomatic protocols. The demonstration hall was a vast circular chamber with viewing galleries rising in tiers around a central platform. Each species had been assigned a display area. The human section was the smallest, tucked into a corner where the lighting was. Jake supervised the setup of the resonance engine. It was not an impressive-looking device. The main unit was roughly the size of a refrigerator, with smooth metal surfaces and a single control panel. No glowing crystals, no floating components, no visible signs of the revolutionary technology contained inside. Alien scientists wandered past and stopped to look. Their reactions followed a predictable pattern. First came curiosity, then confusion, and finally amusement. Jake heard words in a dozen translated languages that all meant the same thing: primitive, simple, disappointing. A group of researchers gathered nearby and made no effort to hide their conversation. The humans actually believe this crude box can compete with real technology. Perhaps they do not understand what the summit represents. Someone should explain to them gently. Why bother? They will learn soon enough when the demonstrations begin. Laughter rippled through the group. Ben, the youngest member of Jake's team, clenched his fists. How can you just stand there and take this? They are treating us like jokes. Jake finished adjusting a connection inside the engine and closed the panel. They are treating us exactly how they have treated every species that looked different from their expectations. They were mocked for 2 centuries before the Dominion acknowledged their shield technology. They faced 3 wars before anyone took them seriously. So we just accept the insults. No, Jake turned to face his team. Lisa, Amy, Ben, and the dozen other engineers and scientists who had dedicated years of their lives to this moment. We accept that their opinions do not determine our worth. They measure value by appearance and tradition. They see a small device made by a young species and assume it must be inferior. They are wrong, and tomorrow they will know it. The first day of the summit passed with speeches and ceremonies. Welcomed the delegations with words that praised cooperation, while making clear that they remained the center of galactic civilization. Other leaders responded with carefully diplomatic phrases that meant nothing. That night Jake stood alone in the demonstration hall. The lights had dimmed, and shadows filled the vast space. He placed his hand on the resonance engine and felt the quiet hum of its systems. 50 years ago, humans had received their first message from the stars. It had been a simple greeting from an exploration vessel. The galaxy had watched as this small species on an ordinary planet struggled to comprehend that they were not alone. Most aliens expected humanity to spend centuries catching up to established civilizations. They had not expected humans to look at the universe and ask different questions than everyone else. Jake smiled in the darkness. The resonance engine was not just a power source. It was a different way of understanding reality. Every other species built technology to fight against the universe, to shield themselves from cosmic forces, to dominate nature through brute power. Humans had built something that worked with the universe instead of against it. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see what that difference meant. Lisa found him there an hour later. You should sleep. Big day tomorrow. Jake nodded but did not move. They called us primitive. They did. They laughed at our ship, our technology, our entire species. They did that too. Jake finally turned away from the engine. His tired eyes held a spark of something that made Lisa smile. Let them laugh, he said. They measure worth by appearance. We measure it by results. And tomorrow, we are going to show them results they cannot ignore. Demonstration arena filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Thousands of beings occupied the tiered galleries, their attention fixed on the central platform where each species would display their technology. Lights floated in the air, capturing everything for broadcast to 100 worlds. Jake stood with his team in their assigned corner. The resonance engine sat on a small platform beside them, looking even less impressive under the bright lights. Around them, other delegations prepared their demonstrations with visible confidence. The polished crystalline weapons that hummed with barely contained power. They adjusted their shield generator, a beautiful sphere of interlocking metal plates that seemed to breathe. We are scheduled last, Amy said, reading from her display tablet, after everyone else has shown their most advanced technology. Lisa crossed her arms. They want us to look bad by comparison. They want us to give up and go home, Ben added. Half the delegates have not even looked at our section. Jake watched the arena with calm eyes. Good. Expectations work both ways. The lower they set the bar, the more impressive it will be when we clear it. The demonstrations began with the High Arbiter himself introduced their creation, a weapon called the Core Breaker. It was a slender device, almost delicate in appearance, but when activated it produced a beam of energy that could destabilize the core of a planet. The demonstration used a small artificial asteroid as a target. Within seconds, the asteroid cracked apart from the inside, its molten center spilling into space. The audience responded with respectful silence. The had reminded everyone why they ruled the Dominion. They came next with their supernova shield. A small star was simulated at one end of the arena, its fury condensed into a controlled burst of radiation and heat that would kill any living thing instantly. The shield activated, and the deadly energy washed over it like water over stone. Not a single particle passed through. Applause filled the chamber. The delegation bowed with visible pride. Other species followed. They demonstrated their matter printer, constructing a fully functional drone in minutes. They showed a biological enhancement system that could triple the of any species. They revealed a communication device that allowed instant contact across any distance. Each demonstration drew admiration and respect. Each reminded the galaxy that these were civilizations of immense power and knowledge. Then came Earth's turn. Jake walked to the central platform, pushing the resonance engine on a simple wheeled cart. The contrast with the elegant presentations before him could not have been sharper. Some delegates in the galleries began talking among themselves. Others checked their personal devices, clearly uninterested. A few stood up and headed toward the exits. Watched from his position of honor with an expression of patient amusement. Beside him, War Marshal, commander of the military, openly smirked. The human delegation will now present their technology, announced the summit coordinator, a neutral official. A device they call the resonance engine. Jake positioned the engine at the center of the platform. He could feel thousands of eyes on him, most of them filled with boredom or pity. He did not care. The resonance engine, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, converts ambient cosmic radiation into stable, usable energy. He activated the device. For several seconds, nothing visible happened. The engine hummed quietly. Its surface showed no lights, no dramatic displays of power. The audience's disinterest grew heavier. Then the station's sensors began to react. A scientist monitoring the demonstration leaned forward in confusion. He checked his readings, then checked them again. His colleague noticed and looked over his shoulder. Both of them went very still. "That cannot be correct," the first scientist whispered. The numbers on their screens showed something impossible. The small human device was generating more energy than the entire orbital station consumed. Not slightly more, 10 times more, and the output was still climbing. "Where is it drawing power from?" the second scientist asked, his voice rising. Jake stood calmly beside his engine. "From radiation that your sensors cannot detect, from energy that passes through your shields and your ships and your bodies every moment of every day. We learned to see what you missed." The murmuring in the galleries grew louder. Delegates who had been leaving stopped and turned back. The scientists monitoring the demonstration began arguing among themselves in rapid, panicked voices. An official approached and showed him a display tablet. The High Arbiter's ancient face showed the first crack in his composure. "Halt this demonstration," demanded, stepping forward. "The readings are clearly a malfunction or a trick." "The readings are accurate," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Delegate, a respected scientist known for her independence. She held her own monitoring device, and her expression was one of pure scientific wonder. "I have run independent scans using 3 different systems," continued. "The human device is doing exactly what they claim. It is harvesting energy from radiation fields that we have always dismissed as background noise, energy that exists everywhere in the universe." Silence fell over the arena. Jake allowed himself a small smile. "We are a young species. We do not have thousands of years of established knowledge telling us what is possible and what is not. So we ask different questions. We looked at the universe and wondered why everyone worked so hard to fight against it, when cooperation might work better. Rose from his seat. His voice cut through the growing chaos with practiced authority. This demonstration is inconclusive. The results require further verification. We will conduct a more rigorous evaluation tomorrow. Of course, Jake agreed easily. We welcome any testing you consider appropriate. The summit coordinator called for a recess. Delegates flooded the floor of the arena, most of them heading toward the human section with sudden, intense interest. Jake found himself surrounded by alien scientists demanding explanations, offering partnerships, and asking questions he could barely keep up with. Through the crowd, he saw Amy speaking with. The scientist was examining the resonance engine with the careful attention of someone whose understanding of reality had just shifted. Lisa appeared at Jake's side, does not look happy. Jake followed her gaze to where the High Arbiter stood with. The two leaders spoke in low, urgent tones. His expression had changed from amusement to something much darker. He thought we would embarrass ourselves, Jake said. Now he is trying to figure out how to save face. What do you think he will do? Jake watched gesture sharply while listened. Something desperate. When people build their identity around being superior, they do not react well to evidence that contradicts it. Should we be worried? Probably. Jake turned back to the crowd of curious aliens waiting for his attention. But we did not come here expecting things to be easy. We came here to change the equation, and I think we just did. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. A young species from an unremarkable planet had revealed technology that made established powers nervous. The universe that had dismissed humanity was suddenly paying very close attention. In the shadows of Prime, forces began moving that would push the coming days toward crisis. But for now, Jake stood in the light of unexpected victory and allowed himself to feel something like hope. They had come here to prove themselves. They had done more than that. They had made the galaxy wonder what else it might have missed. The council chambers of Prime had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic history. Treaties had been signed here. Wars had been ended and begun. Decisions made within these curved walls had shaped the fates of billions. Now they would decide the fate of a small device built by humans. Senator Dawson represented Earth at the emergency session. She was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too many negotiations to be intimidated by ancient architecture. She sat alone at the human delegation table while representatives from 12 species filled the curved benches around her. High Arbiter stood at the center of the chamber. We have called this session to address concerns about the technology demonstrated by the human delegation. The resonance engine poses potential risks that must be evaluated before we can allow its continued operation. Spoke with measured calm. What specific risks concern the Council? The device harvests energy from radiation fields that permeate all of space, replied. We do not know the long-term effects of such harvesting. It could destabilize cosmic phenomena. It could create unpredictable consequences for established shipping lanes and inhabited systems. With respect, said, our scientists have studied these effects extensively. The radiation we harvest regenerates naturally within microseconds. The process is completely sustainable and poses no risk to any system or species. Your scientists, War Marshal stepped forward, his voice dripping with contempt. Humans have been traveling among the stars for half a century. They have studied cosmic phenomena forgive us if we do not accept your assurances without independent verification. Did not flinch, then verify. We have offered complete access to our research and our device. We welcome scrutiny. We propose something more definitive, said. A smile crossed his sharp features. A test that will prove beyond any doubt whether the resonance engine performs as claimed, or whether the humans have deceived this council. The chamber fell silent, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. continued, clearly enjoying the moment. The dying star 7 is entering its final unstable phase. The radiation within its outer belt exceeds anything produced by artificial means. We propose that the humans take their device into that belt and demonstrate its function under truly extreme conditions. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Every species present understood what was suggesting. The radiation around a dying star would destroy any ship, any shield, any technology ever created. He was proposing a death sentence disguised as a scientific test. His communicator buzzed silently. She glanced at it and saw a message from Admiral Cole at Earth Command. "Refuse. This is a trap." She looked across the chamber at satisfied expression. She looked at its carefully neutral face. She thought about Jake and his team, who had worked for years to reach this moment. Before she could respond, a new voice spoke from the chamber entrance. "We accept." Jake walked into the council chamber with Lisa Park at his side, closed her eyes briefly, then turned to face him. "Jake, you do not have the authority to accept on behalf of Earth." "No," Jake agreed, "but I have the authority to volunteer myself and my team for a scientific demonstration. That is all this is, right?" He looked directly at. "A scientific test to prove our claims." Smile widened. "Exactly. A simple test. If your device works as you say, you will survive. If not, the galaxy will know the truth about human technology." "Then we accept," Jake repeated. "But I have one condition. The test coordinates will be by independent observers before we launch. No surprises." For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance perhaps, or concern. Naturally, we are not savages. Raised his hand to silence the growing murmurs in the chamber. "The test will proceed as proposed. Representatives from neutral species will verify all conditions. The demonstration will occur in 3 standard days." The session ended. As the delegates filed out, grabbed Jake's arm. "Do you have any idea what you just agreed to? That radiation belt will destroy your ship in minutes." "Not if the engine works." "And if it does not?" Jake met her eyes steadily. "Then we die proving that humanity had the courage to try. But I have spent 10 years building this device, Senator. I know what it can do. The question is whether the galaxy is ready to believe it." Lisa walked with him back to the human section of the station. "Looked too happy when you accepted. He has something planned." "I know. And you accepted anyway. If we refuse, they label us cowards and frauds. Our technology gets confiscated for study. Earth loses any credibility we have built. Accepting was the only option that gives us a chance." They found Ben and Amy Williams waiting at the resonance engine. Both looked worried. "We heard about the test," Amy said. "Jake, the engine was designed for stable cosmic radiation, not the chaos around a dying star. The energy levels will be thousands of times higher than anything we have tested." "Can the engine handle it?" Amy hesitated. "In theory, yes. The underlying physics should scale, but theory and reality do not always match." "Then we have 3 days to make sure they do." Jake put his hand on the engine. "Start running simulations. I want to know every possible failure point and how to prevent it." The team worked through the night. They barely noticed when Delegate appeared at the edge of their work area, watching silently. Jake finally looked up from his calculations. "Can I help you?" Glanced around to make sure they were alone. When she spoke, her voice was low. "The test coordinates provided are false. The actual location is deeper in the radiation belt than announced. The energy levels will be nearly double what your simulations assume." Jake stared at her. "How do you know this?" "Because I still have friends in the military who believe in science more than politics. Does not want you to survive. He wants to eliminate the threat your technology represents before other species can study it." Lisa's hand moved toward her weapon. "We should report this to the council." "With what evidence?" asked. My sources would be executed for treason. I cannot prove anything. She looked at Jake with something like respect. I am telling you because what you have created deserves to be seen by the galaxy. It would be a tragedy if small minds destroyed it through fear and jealousy. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it is worth, I hope you survive. The universe needs new ideas. After she left, the human team stood in silence. Double the energy levels, Ben said quietly. The engine was not designed for that. Jake looked at the resonance engine, at the years of work it represented, at the team that had given everything to reach this moment. He thought about Earth and the billions of people who would never know how close humanity came to proving itself among the stars. Then he smiled. The engine was not designed for that, he agreed. So we have 3 days to redesign it. Amy, start recalculating the absorption matrices. Ben, I need new projections on the field expansion limits. Lisa, find us a ship that can survive long enough for the engine to activate. You still want to do this? Lisa asked. Jake nodded. They tried to rig the game against us. That tells me they are scared of what happens if we succeed. And when someone is that afraid of you winning, it means you were always supposed to win. He turned back to his work. Let us show them what humans can do when the stakes are real. Dying Star 7 filled the viewport with angry red light. Massive arcs of plasma erupted from its surface and fell back like waves on a burning ocean. The radiation readings on their sensors climbed higher with every passing second. Lisa Park gripped the controls of their small vessel with steady hands. Approaching the designated coordinates, radiation levels already exceeding initial projections. Jake stood behind her, watching the monitors that showed the resonance engine status. Ben sat at the engineering station, his face pale but determined. 3 days of desperate work had pushed the engine beyond its original design, but none of them knew if it would be enough. Sensors are detecting additional heat signatures deeper in the belt, Ben reported. Was right. The real coordinates are much closer to the star than announced. How much closer? Lisa asked. Close enough that our conventional shields will fail in approximately 4 minutes after we reach the target zone. Jake looked at the star through the viewport. Then we need the engine online before 4 minutes pass. Lisa, take us in. The ship dove into the radiation belt. Alarms began sounding immediately as the outer shields absorbed punishment that would have vaporized unprotected metal in seconds. The temperature inside the cockpit rose, despite the cooling systems working at maximum capacity. Back on Prime, thousands of observers watched the sensor feeds. The humans had been given a small vessel with basic shields, nothing that could survive long-term exposure to stellar radiation. Most delegates expected to witness a quick and unfortunate accident. High Arbiter sat in the observation gallery with practiced calm. Beside him, War Marshal watched the screens with barely hidden satisfaction. 2 minutes until shield failure, Ben announced. Sweat ran down his face. Energy absorption is spiking across all frequencies. The conventional shields are not designed for this. Lisa pushed the ship deeper. The star's gravity pulled at them, hungry and patient. Jake, we need the engine now. Jake's fingers moved across the control panel. The engine needs to reach full synchronization before I can activate the primary field. The radiation has to stabilize in the collection matrices. We do not have time for stabilization. I know. Jake looked at the readings, at the numbers that told him everything was happening too fast. I am going to activate at partial synchronization. It will work or it will not. He pressed the activation sequence. The resonance engine hummed to life. For a terrible moment, nothing changed. The shields continued failing. The temperature continued rising. Ben's voice called out the countdown to destruction. Then the engine found its rhythm. Jake watched the readings transform. The chaotic radiation that had been tearing at their shields suddenly flowed into the engine like water finding a channel. The collection matrices filled faster than any simulation had predicted. Energy that should have killed them became energy that fed them. "Shield failure in 30 seconds, Ben said. Then he stopped. He stared at his screens in disbelief. Wait, the shields are not failing anymore. The radiation levels around the ship are dropping." Lisa checked her own instruments. Confirmed. The engine is absorbing the radiation faster than it can reach us. Our effective shield strength is actually increasing. The sensor feeds back at Prime showed something that made the watching delegates lean forward in their seats. The small human vessel sat in a pocket of calm within the storm. The resonance engine was not just surviving the radiation belt. It was drinking it, converting the fury of a dying star into clean, stable power. "That is impossible," whispered. Said nothing. His ancient eyes watched the screens with an expression that might have been fear. Jake allowed himself a moment to breathe. It is working. Amy was right about the scaling. The engine adapts to the available energy. "We have proven our point," Lisa said. "We should retreat before something goes wrong." Jake looked at the sensor readings. The engine was performing beyond their best projections. It was pulling energy from the radiation fields with an efficiency that seemed almost hungry. And as it did, the immediate area around their ship grew calmer, more stable. An idea formed in his mind, a possibility so large that he almost dismissed it as fantasy. "Ben, run a projection for me. What happens if we increase the engine's field radius by a factor of 10? Ben's fingers moved across his console. His eyes widened. The absorption rate would increase proportionally. The engine could potentially affect a much larger area of the radiation belt. Large enough to affect the star itself. Silence filled the cockpit. Lisa turned in her seat to stare at him. "Jake," she said slowly, "are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting? The star is dying because its internal processes have become unstable. Too much energy is escaping too fast. If the engine can absorb and redirect that energy..." Jake trailed off, running calculations in his head. Ben completed the thought. "You want to try to heal a dying star. I want to show the galaxy that our technology is not just about generating power. It is about working with the universe instead of against it. Every other species builds weapons and shields. We built something that can help." Lisa shook her head slowly. This was not part of the plan. The plan was to survive a rigged test. We have done that. Now we have a chance to do something more. Jake moved to stand beside her. "This star has 3 inhabited planets in its system. When it dies, billions of beings will lose their homes. If there is even a small chance we can prevent that, do we have the right to fly away?" Lisa looked at the star, at the massive eruptions of plasma that marked its final days, at the doomed worlds that circled it, unaware that their fate might rest on a decision made in the next few seconds. "You are asking a lot," she said quietly. "I am asking everything. That is what moments like this require." Lisa turned back to her controls. "Tell me where to go." Jake directed her deeper into the radiation belt, toward the heart of the stellar chaos. The engine's field expanded as they flew, absorbing more and more of the deadly energy. The calm pocket around their ship grew into a calm sphere, then a calm region that extended for hundreds of kilometers. Back on Prime, the observers had stopped talking, even sat in stunned silence as the sensor feeds showed something unprecedented. The human vessel was flying toward the core of the dying star, and everywhere it went, stability followed. Stood at a monitoring station, tears forming in her eyes. They are not running, they are not just surviving, they are trying to save the star. Amy Williams watched from the human delegation area, her hands pressed against her mouth. She understood what was happening better than anyone. The resonance engine was doing exactly what she had always believed it could do. It was proving that humanity's approach to the universe was not just different, it was better. Jake watched the readings as they approached the star's outer shell. The decay rate is slowing. Ben, confirm. Confirmed. Ben's voice shook with emotion. The star's energy loss has decreased by 12%, 15%. The engine is actually stabilizing the stellar core. Lisa pushed the ship closer. The view outside was nothing but fire and light, but inside they flew in perfect calm. The resonance engine sang with power, channeling forces that should have been destructive into patterns of balance and renewal. The inhabited planets, Jake said. What is their projected survival timeline now? Ben ran the calculations. When he spoke, his voice cracked. Before we arrived, they had less than 3 years. Now, if the stabilization continues, they have centuries, maybe longer. Jake closed his eyes. They had come to prove that human technology was worthy of respect. They had done something far greater. They had shown that humanity's first instinct was not to fight or dominate. It was to help. "Take us home," he said to Lisa. "We have a galaxy to talk to." The small ship turned away from the dying star that was no longer dying. Behind them, the resonance engine's effects continued to spread, healing wounds in the fabric of space that had seemed permanent. The universe would never look at humanity the same way again. The human vessel docked at Prime to a reception that no one had expected. Thousands of beings filled the arrival bay, representatives from every species at the summit. They had watched the sensor feeds. They had seen the impossible happen. Jake stepped off the ship to face a wall of silence. Then slowly it began. A sound that built from a whisper to a roar, applause, cheering, sounds of celebration from 100 different species. Lisa Park walked beside him, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. "I think they liked it." Delegate pushed through the crowd to reach them. Her eyes were bright with emotion. "You did it. You actually did it. The star's decay rate has stabilized at 32% below critical levels. Those planets will survive." Behind her came representatives from the. They crowded around the human delegation with questions and praise and offers of alliance. Species that had ignored humanity's existence hours ago now competed for their attention. But the crowd parted when High Arbiter approached. The ancient leader of the Dominion moved slowly, his bronze face unreadable. Beside him, War Marshal looked like a man watching his world collapse. His rigged test had been meant to destroy humanity's credibility. Instead, it had created heroes. Stopped in front of Jake, the two men faced each other across centuries of history and expectation. "You were supposed to fail," said quietly. "The test was designed to prove that your species is not ready for the responsibilities of galactic civilization." Jake nodded. "I know." "Instead, you saved 3 billion lives. You demonstrated technology that surpasses anything in the Dominion's archives. You did what no other species has ever done." His voice carried a weight of reluctant admission. "You made us look small." "That was not our intention." "No, that makes it worse." Looked at the resonance engine being unloaded from the ship. "What do you want, human? Name your price. Territory, resources, a seat on the High Council. What does Earth demand in exchange for this technology?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the crowd listened. "We do not want territory or resources," Jake finally said. "We have a planet that we love. What would we do with more?" "Then what?" "We want to share the technology." Stepped forward. "Impossible. You cannot simply give away such power. It must be controlled, regulated, studied." "Why?" Jake asked. "Every species faces challenges. Stars die, planets become uninhabitable, resources run out. The resonance engine can help with all of those problems. Why would we keep it for ourselves?" Studied him with those ancient eyes. "Because power is leverage. With this technology, humanity could become the most influential species in the galaxy. You could demand anything." "We could," Jake agreed. "But that is not who we are." He looked around at the gathered aliens, at beings from worlds he had never seen and cultures he barely understood. 50 years ago, we received a message from the stars. It was the most terrifying and wonderful moment in our history. Everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe changed in an instant. The crowd listened in silence. We spent those 50 years trying to catch up, trying to prove we belonged among species that had traveled between stars while we were still learning to make fire, and we realized something important. Jake turned back to, survival is not a competition. The universe is too large and too dangerous for any species to face it alone. The more we help each other, the better chance we all have. From the back of the crowd, Amy Williams watched with tears in her eyes. This was what they had worked for, not glory or power, connection. Shook his head. Pretty words, but politics is not built on idealism. Sharing this technology will destabilize existing power structures. The Dominion has maintained peace through strength. What you propose would throw everything into chaos. Or it would make everyone stronger, said, stepping forward. The Dominion maintained peace through fear, through making sure no one could challenge our supremacy. What the humans offer is something different, a peace built on mutual benefit. Other voices joined hers. Scientists and diplomats from a dozen species spoke up, arguing that humanity's approach deserved consideration. The unified front of the Dominion began to fracture as new possibilities emerged. Raised his hand for silence, the chamber fell quiet. You know that sabotaged your test, said. He sent you to coordinates that should have killed you. Yes. And yet you offer to share your technology with the species that tried to murder you. Jake looked at. The war marshal's face had gone pale. The actions of one frightened man do not represent an entire species. We choose to believe that most beings want to build rather than destroy. We could be wrong, but we would rather be wrong while trying to help than right while refusing to try. A message arrived from Earth Command. Admiral Cole's voice came through Jake's communicator, loud enough for everyone to hear. The human fleet is in position. 63 vessels, each carrying a functional resonance engine. We are prepared to distribute them to any species willing to accept them as gifts, with full technical specifications and training for their use. The crowd erupted. Gifts, not trades, not conditional offers, gifts. Lunged toward Jake. This is a trick, a ploy for influence. No one gives away power for nothing. Lisa moved to intercept him, but Jake held up his hand. We are not giving away power. We are sharing capability. There is a difference. When everyone can help themselves, no one needs to dominate anyone else. Stood very still. The weight of seemed to press down on him. Everything the Dominion had built rested on the assumption that power was finite, that one species rising meant another falling. The humans were offering a universe where that calculation no longer applied. Why? Asked. It was almost a whisper. Why would you give away such advantage? Jake thought about Earth, about the small blue world that had looked up at the stars for thousands of years, dreaming of the day they might reach them, about the hope and fear of that first contact, and the long journey to this moment. Because we remember what it was like to feel small, he said. We remember looking up at the universe and wondering if we mattered. Every species feels that at some point. Every civilization asks whether they are alone, whether they belong, whether they are enough. He looked around at the gathered beings from across the galaxy. We want everyone to feel what we felt when we realized we could reach the stars. Not fear, not competition, just wonder, just possibility. The chamber fell silent again, but this silence was different. It was the silence of minds changing, of old assumptions crumbling, of a new future taking shape. Stepped forward to stand beside Jake. Other scientists joined her. Representatives from species that had never worked with them began to gather around the humans, drawn by something more powerful than fear or obligation. Hope looked at the growing coalition. He looked at, standing alone in his fury. He looked at the resonance engine that had saved 3 billion lives and could save billions more. Then slowly, he walked forward and stood with the humans. "The Dominion accepts your gift," he said, "and offers one in return: full recognition of Earth as an equal member of galactic civilization, with all rights and responsibilities that entails." The cheering that followed shook the walls of the ancient station. In the years that followed, historians would point to this moment as the beginning of a new age: the age of cooperation, the age of shared survival, the age when a small species from an unremarkable planet changed the equation for everyone. Jake stood in the center of it all, surrounded by allies he had never expected, holding technology that had grown from a workshop in Nebraska to a gift for the galaxy. He thought about the delegates who had laughed at his device just days ago. He thought about how quickly contempt could become respect when given the chance. The universe was vast and dangerous and beautiful. Humanity had finally found its place in it. Not through conquest, not through domination. Through the simple, stubborn belief that helping others was always worth the risk.